Hello everyone, welcome to Sunya IAS and welcome to this lecture. Today we are going to talk about a very controversial issue, but an issue which is very important for your GS2 examination, and not many people know that this topic can also be utilized in GS1. We are talking about the Places of Worship Act. Now, this particular act was very much in news when the Ayodhya verdict came from the Supreme Court side. Now, the Ayodhya verdict, many people would remember the date of 9th November 2019. The year was 2019, and there was a lot of anticipation about this verdict, that what will the Supreme Court say about the Ayodhya Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid case. So, of course, we all know what Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court gave that particular piece of land to the Hindu community and gave 5 acres of land in Uttar Pradesh near that particular area to the Waqf board. But why was this act in news? And the verdict was in 2019, but even today we are talking about this act. Now that is because there is another dispute that has come up. That is the Gyanvapi Mosque issue. Okay? So what I want is that first of all, you don't get confused. So many issues, so many disputes. Let's get to the basic of it. And let's see how this particular topic is going to help us to write an answer, first of all, and how, if a particular question comes up on this act, specifically on this act, how we can answer it. See, we got independence in 1947. But it was not in 1947 that we became a religiously heterogeneous country. We might be a country with Hindu majority, but we have had such a rich legacy of various religions having their impact over the landscape of this country through architecture, right? There are various architectural marvels. And when we talk about architecture, there is a subsection of architecture called religious architecture. So when we talk about temples, when we talk about mosques, when we talk about church, when we talk about Gurdwara, when we talk about any such place, that is a part of religious architecture, okay? So the point was that now we have gained independence. We have also very clearly declared that we are a secular country. Our preamble did not have that word secularism, but it was very clear that we are a secular country. That was, what does a secular country mean? That we will always give that space to every community to live the way they want to. Fine. See how the train of thought is going. So we are a secular country. Now we have a lot of religious architecture, and in history, this religious architecture has been built, has been broken, has been built again, has been broken again, has been built again, has been broken again. So for example, the Somnath temple in Gujarat was attacked multiple times by Mahmud Ghazni and Muhammad Ghori. We all know that. Various remains from the temple were taken to various places, and various other religious architecture was created out of that. So that has happened in history. No one denies that. But the problem is that in a secular country, who takes the decision of this particular mosque was a temple, or this Gurdwara was a mosque, or this temple was a Gurdwara? Who declares that? Who does that decision making that we will go this much amount back in time and we will restore the identity of this particular religious place to the earlier version of itself? And what will we restore it to? We have to go 500 years, we have to go 500 years, sometimes 1,000 years, sometimes more. We have to go this much amount back in time and then decide that where we want to go back to. Now, this is not possible. Okay, this is not possible because this will create a lot of communal tensions. You understand that, right? Dekho, even the British, for example, created their own kind of architecture. है ना? We all know that, for instance, British took a lot of jewels from the Taj Mahal. British rebuilt the Qutub Minar according to their convenience. They built a floor on Qutub Minar according to their convenience. So have we decided to break off that floor? Have we decided to reinstate the precious metals, precious stones that they took out of Taj Mahal? No. We have not done that because we do not have that jurisdiction. We se mera matlab hai the Indian state. Similarly, when communal tensions were very high in India, and what time am I talking about? I am talking about the early 1990s. Okay. In the 1990s, early 1990s, the communal tensions were very high in India. And why was this? It was because of the demand of the Ram Mandir, which is now being constructed. It was because of the Rath Yatra that was created, and these are well documented facts. Okay. It was the Rath Yatra, the demand for Babri Masjid to be converted into Ram Mandir again, and then eventually the demolition that happened. It wasn't one of the best phases of Indian democracy, let me tell you, but it happened. So, before this demolition, when this Rath Yatra had happened, L.K. Advani was a very famous leader of this Rath Yatra. And when this Rath Yatra had happened and L.K. Advani had been arrested in Bihar, okay, L.K. Advani, who was the BJP president at that point of time, was arrested in Bihar by Lalu Prasad Yadav, chief minister of that time. Very interesting stories behind it. But when he was arrested, it was very clear that now violence is going to break, and now the demands for other such places to be converted back into temples or to be converted back into their previous forms are going to come now. This has opened a Pandora's box. That is the time in 1991 that Places of Worship Act was enacted. This is the backstory of it. And the Places of Worship Act, it very clearly says that apart from the Ayodhya disputed land, which is not disputed anymore, apart from the Ayodhya disputed land, no other place of worship will be changed in its character. Please listen to me carefully. Apart from the Ayodhya land, no other place of worship's character will be changed. Are you understanding? That means if it is a Hindu place of worship, it will remain a Hindu place of worship. If it is a Muslim place of worship, it will remain so. If it is Christian, it will remain so. Sikh, it will remain so. Buddhist, Jain, everything, it will remain as it is. And Ayodhya will be the only exception to this rigid rule. Fine. Now, one question should come to your mind very organically. That throughout the course of history, at various places, even during the British times, the character of these places have been changed. So what is the cut-off date? What is the cut-off date from which we are taking that at this point of time, whatever the religious character of this place is, it is going to stay the same till eternity? What is the cut-off date? So in this regard, the parliament went very basic. Parliament said that the day that we got our independence, that is 15th of August, 1947, At that point, whatever is the character of the places of worship, it will remain so. Ayodhya will be the only exception to it. Why is Ayodhya an exception to it? Ayodhya is an exception to it because that dispute was going on at that point of time. है ना? After this act was enacted, the Babri Masjid demolition happened after this. Okay. So that is there. Now, this is the background about this thing. Why has it come into the picture again? It has come into the picture again because after the Ayodhya verdict by the Supreme Court, the Gyanvapi Mosque case resurfaced. Now, Gyanvapi Mosque is also a mosque in UP and it has come again into the picture. Why? Because it is a well documented fact that it was created by Aurangzeb, है ना, in his times. It was created by Aurangzeb and he broke an ancient temple called the Vishveshwar temple. The Vishveshwar temple. He broke this temple. He used the space and the resources of this temple to create the Gyanvapi Masjid. ठीक है? That is the reason it is back. And this has happened with a lot of places. Fine, it has happened with a lot of places in our country. But the problem is that now the demands are coming up for the amendment of the Places of Worship Act. Okay? If the act is amended, will it lead to a Pandora's box being opened? Will it lead to a domino effect? Will it hamper the communal harmony of the country? That is the question. Right now, the demand at hand by the Hindu community is not that the mosque should be redeemed back to being a temple. That is not the demand right now. The demand is to give the freedom of worship to Hindu people in the premises of the Gyanvapi Mosque. So there are 5 women who say, these particular 5 women who are the petitioners, they say, their lawyer says on their behalf that they have been worshipping and they were worshipping in the premises of the Gyanvapi Mosque very regularly before the demolition of Babri Masjid. After the demolition of Babri Masjid, because the tensions increased, these people started worshipping in the premises only once a year. And now that permission is also being taken away, because communal tensions and whatnot. So what these people are demanding is freedom of worship to worship their religion and their God in the Gyanvapi premises. Fine. So what has happened after this? The Supreme Court has said that whether this place was a Hindu place or not, that has to be testified by the Archaeological Survey of India. Don't get confused. I'm not talking about the Ayodhya dispute right now. That dispute is settled. I'm talking about the Gyanvapi case, and the Gyanvapi case because of which the Places of Worship Act is back in news. And I will just tell you where this entire topic will fit in your UPSC. This is very important. Fine. So the Supreme Court has said that the Archaeological Survey of India has to undertake a survey if this was a Hindu site at one point of time. And this started happening in 2022. The site started being studied, the Gyanvapi site. The ASI personnel started studying the site and a shivling was found. A shivling was found in the pond of that area. Now, out of the 5 people who petitioned, 4 of them said that please send this shivling for testing and see that if it is an ancient shivling, to understand whether it is an ancient site or not, or whether someone has put this shivling here to win the case. One person has said that this shivling is very pure, so you should not make it go through this testing and all of this process, so don't do any of that. But the point is that there will be demands to change the character of various places of worship. And how much can this be allowed? That needs to be assessed. Now, broadly, you have understood the issue. We will, of course, go into point by point study in this video. But now you need to understand where in the UPSC examination this issue is going to help you. So, GS1, society, there is an aspect of communalism there. Fine. There is an aspect of communalism there. So, in the aspect of communalism, if you are asked a question that what are the issues which have led to communalism being a strong feature and a persistent feature of the Indian society, we will also say that, and we will give the example of the Places of Worship Act also, and how litigation becomes a method of instilling communalism. Because some people might be having a very clear-cut demand that, okay, we want to see whether this was a temple or not. We want to see what happened in history. But most people are using it for political gains, because it is easier to convince people on the basis of religion than it is to convince people on the basis of development, on the basis of roads, railways, infrastructure. That does not count. But to convince people on the basis of religion is easier. So when we write an answer on communalism, we say that how litigation, as seen in the Ayodhya and Gyanvapi case, can become a source and a feeder to communalism. Now coming to GS2, wherein higher probability is there that a separate question also might be asked in a 10 marker out of this and out of secularism. So when we are asked that what proves that India is a secular country, what is the proof? Because there are communal tensions, there is this, there is that. How will you prove that India is a secular country? You will give the example of Places of Worship Act. है ना? Although the Places of Worship Act does restrict Article 25 in some ways, because if some particular country, if some particular community wants to check and wants to assess whether their ancient land was actually, changed and was actually exploited, then it is their freedom of religion. It is the way they want to express their religion. But then, in Article 25 itself, it is written subject to public order and morality. Only subject to public order and morality are you allowed to practice your religion, profess your religion, practice your religion, propagate your religion, subject to public order and morality. Fine. So, when you are asked a question on secularism, you can give an example that the fact that we are maintaining the character of the religious places under the Places of Worship Act, we are trying to minimalize the communal conflicts, shows that we are a secular country. Fine. Now, when we talk about the Places of Worship Act, if you get a separate 10 marker, 15 marker is a little difficult because it would be a lot of detail that you would need to write, and UPSC does not want to ask so much of details. But if you are asked this particular question in a 10 marker, you just simply write these particular issues. So for example, what is the scope and extent of this act? On what bodies is this act applicable? So it is applicable to all religious sites. Religious sites. So what are religious sites? It's temples, it's mosques, it's church, it's gurdwara, and it can be various other sites also. Fine. Any other place of religious worship is also included. What is not included over here? historic sites are not included. For example, let's say, for example, when we talk about a particular, let's say for instance, Red Fort, you talk about Red Fort. Now, Red Fort is not a religious site. है ना? We know that Red Fort is not a religious site. If tomorrow Archaeological Survey of India undertakes a survey, undertakes research, and finds out that the remnants of an ancient temple have been found in one corner of the Red Fort, and it wants to excavate that. Okay? It wants to excavate that. That can be done. It does not mean that you are declaring Red Fort as a Hindu monument or you are, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. But you can say and you can admit that a temple has been found. Similarly, you talk about Taj Mahal. When you talk about Taj Mahal, now Taj Mahal is a mazar, right? You understand? It's a grave. So, people come there and people also pay their respects through prayers also. लोग नमाज पढ़ने भी आते हैं वहां पे. If let's say, so नमाज पढ़ने आते हैं, that means it is it has a character of Islamic religion as well. If people are offering namaz over there, it means that it has an Islamic religious character to it. Again, take an example. If tomorrow an ancient temple or a remnant of a temple is found out by the Archaeological Survey of India from a ASI site, the ASI can declare that this part in the ancient times used to be a temple. Fine. And this is for the discovery of overall history of India. This is communal tension is a different thing, and rediscovering the history of India is a different thing, and the process of rediscovering the history of India cannot be stopped. We cannot stop the process of rediscovery because our population or our people are very emotional about religion, right? We have to conduct researches. So that is why ASI monuments are exempt from this. Okay? ASI non-religious monuments. Now, the primary feature is, of course, prevention of conversion. You will not convert the religious character of a place of worship, and the cutoff date for that is 15th August 1947. So, whatever religious character that place possessed on this particular date, that is the status quo, that is going to remain the status quo. You are not going to change it. Fine. Then, at that point, of course, there were some disputes which were running at that point of time. So, the Act said that the running disputes will not be suspended. The running disputes, the inquiry will be completed, and Ayodhya was one of them. So, the inquiry into the running disputes of places of worship will be completed, but new inquiries would not be admitted. So, in the Gyanvapi case also, why Supreme Court has even admitted the petition of these 5 women? Supreme Court has said that these women are just demanding the right to worship. They are not demanding the conversion of this particular place, and that is why we have admitted their petition. That is what Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud ji said, okay, in 2022. So that is why Gyanvapi has been accepted. Gyanvapi dispute, this particular petition has been accepted. Fine. Now, other than the ASI aspect of it, you of course know that there was only one site, that is the Ayodhya Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid dispute. That is now settled in 2019. And in fact, you know, the way it was settled was a beautiful example of communal harmony in our country. Because we have seen that what happened during the Citizenship Amendment Act, what happened during the farm protests, what happened. Religion is a very sensitive matter, a very, very sensitive matter. So the ruling was in favor of the Hindu community in very explicit terms. But the way things proceeded after that, there was no major clash, there was no major riot, there were some small disputes here and there, but there was nothing major that went across in the country. And that was relief also, and that was something to be proud of also. Fine, that is there. Now, I have told you about the Gyanvapi issue. So, when you talk about the Gyanvapi issue, the history is regarding Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb breaking a Hindu temple and creating the Gyanvapi Masjid. That is the history. And in the history, how do we deconstruct history? We do not have people who are alive. We do not have video cameras from that. We do not have video footage, right? So we deconstruct history through literature. No? Any history which is about more than 100, 200 years old, we don't have video evidence for that as such. And we don't even have, just say, even let's go back to the Battle of Plassey, 1857. We don't have any video evidence for that. We just rely on literature. We rely on architecture, architecture also, archives also. So there's this book, Yasin Alamgiri. For those familiar with history, you would know that Aurangzeb was called Alamgir. Fine. So Yasir Alamgiri, this book written by Saqib Khan. Saqib Khan, this book has admitted that he broke the Hindu temple and he created the Gyanvapi Mosque. So that issue is settled, that yes, Aurangzeb in his time broke this temple and he created the Gyanvapi Masjid. Fine. Now this issue came to the courts much later than the Ayodhya dispute. Ayodhya dispute, I told you, was there even in 1947, right? But this issue came in 1991. When the Rath Yatra was happening, when there was a lot of violence also. The Kar Sevaks who were doing the Rath Yatra under the leadership of L.K. Advani, many of them were shot down as well. There was a lot of violence in that entire episode, and that was the time when this particular dispute reached the courts. Fine. The present case, I have told you, 5 women have demanded the right to worship round the year. Right to worship in the premises of Gyanvapi round the year. Fine. And when we talk about the defense, prosecution and defense, right? So when we talk about the defense of course says that there was no Hindu temple over here. So what the Supreme Court has ordered is that videography has to be done, and videography was done. And during the videography by Archaeological Survey of India, the shivling was found. And that shivling, the stand of these 5 women, I have told you about. 4 of them said that get it tested. 1 of them said that leave it as it is very religiously precious. Okay, that is there. Now, if you get a separate question on this act, only then these points you can write. Otherwise, these are points very specific to this particular act. So you cannot write these points in a question wherein you are asked about secularism, right? So one thing is, it bars judicial review. Judicial review is a part of the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. And you have basically taken away the right of any person out there to come to the judiciary and say that this particular place of worship should be checked, that whether its character is something that can be attributed to our ancient history, or it is something that has been imposed, right? So You have barred judicial review. And when I tell you these points, please know, please understand that the beauty of UPSC is that it provides you a platform to debate. And what is the quality of a good debater? The quality of a good debater is that you might be completely against that particular argument itself, but when you are defending that argument in the debate, you are defending it with all your might. That is what the quality of a good debater is. So when you are writing points against the act, you should not be thinking whether you support the act or you don't support the act. You can have your own ideology. But one of the core qualities of bureaucrats that UPSC is looking for is an unbiased nature, a neutral stand to political issues, है ना? Neutrality expect की जाती है आपसे. That is why never be afraid of writing both the sides of the coin. So yes, it does bar judicial review, है ना? Then 15th August 1947 has nothing to do with religion, right? 15th August 1947 is the political history of India. It has nothing to do with how religion has shaped our country. So it's an irrational cutoff date. It is an easy way to decide the cutoff date, basically. You know, just when we talk about the OBC reservation. So OBC reservation में we gave the criteria of 8 lakh per annum for creamy layer. And the same 8 lakh per annum we also used for the EWS reservation, that anyone in the unreserved category earning less than 8 lakh per annum will be eligible for the economically weaker section reservation, right? So the criticism behind it is that it was an easy way out. कि OBC में 8% 8 lakh का करा ही हुआ है, EWS में इसको copy paste कर दो, right? So similar kind of criticism comes for this also, that 15th August was our Independence date. You choose the same date for the as the cutoff also. Fine. So that is, and again I'm saying that when you criticize with all your might. Make sure that you are criticizing with all your might, all your understanding. Fine. Then overall, it is a politicized issue. You understand that. Again, the history, understanding the history of a particular country is very important. The real history, understanding the real history is important. But politicizing the issue to create more and more tensions between the various religions is not okay. Then exemption, why only Ayodhya? Because Ayodhya was not the place which was disputed, not the only place which was disputed in 1947. Okay, multiple more disputes were also running forward. So that is there. And overall, it is not in the spirit of secularism. As I told you, Article 25, if some community, if some person wants to prove, if some person has the relevant proof also and they want to reclaim their ancient religious site back, so this particular act is stopping them from doing so. That is a problem. Now, this act overall needs a little bit of reform. Fine. This act needs a little bit of reform, and that is why those things are being suggested. So for example, the arbitrariness of 15th August 1947 needs to be justified. Huh? If you cannot justify it, you need to have a better date, a better time, or maybe a time period which you can justify that why this particular date to declare a particular monument as this religious monument. Why this particular date to freeze the religious characteristic of all the monuments out there. Okay? Then this act is only prohibitive. This act does not give any remedy out there. that if let's say, अब जैसे क्या हुआ कि in the Babri Masjid demolition was a clear cut case of mobocracy. What happens when the mobs go rogue? It was a clear cut case of mobocracy. So LK Advani led this yatra from Somnath to Ayodhya. Somnath in Gujarat to Ayodhya in UP. He led this particular yatra and 20 Kar Sevaks were killed at that point of time when LK Advani was arrested by Lalu Prasad Yadav. Fine. Now all this mobocracy happening, all this violence happening, even during this Rath Yatra, there were many killings that are unreported. And post that, the Hindu-Muslim tensions that kept on brimming, it was problematic, right? So, when you are giving an act which is only stopping people from doing some things, but not penalizing them from doing that, that act is not effective. In political science, we have a thinker called Hobbes. So Hobbes says that covenants without swords are nothing but words. What that means is laws without the power of any punishment. Any law which does not have any power of any punishment is a fruitless piece of legislation, because people will not follow that law until and unless they are scared of punishment. Fine. So that is there. Then it is also said that it is beyond legislative jurisdiction because it goes in the personal domain of the people. It impinges the fundamental rights. And in fundamental rights, you must also know that Article 13, which constitutionalizes judicial review as a concept, says that any particular act, any particular piece of legislation which is against the fundamental rights, that is the part 3, will be null and void, will be unconstitutional. Hai na? And I just told you that this might be misconstrued as being against Article 25, might also be misconstrued as being against Article 29 and 30. Okay? Cultural and educational rights as well. Now, overall, whenever this issue, especially when the Babri Masjid demolition happened, this issue became a deadlock because no party was trying to understand the opinion of the other party, and that is where the judiciary should ideally come in. And the judiciary did come in during that part. So what has the judicial view regarding the Places of Worship Act been? The thing is, judiciary agreed that first of all, it is under the legislative jurisdiction to pass an act like this. So jurisdiction is there, power is there. There is no doubt that the Parliament of India can engage in this particular legislation because we do not follow the European model of secularism. We do not have strict separation of religion and church. Religion and state. We have a principled distance model. Wherever the state needs to intervene, it will intervene, right? So legislative instrument है, jurisdiction है, but then कहीं ना कहीं थोड़ा सा legislative overreach भी है. The fact that it is giving guarantee to all religions to maintain their places as existed on 15th August 1947 is appreciable. है ना? If this particular guarantee would have been limited to a particular religion or to a particular few religions, that would have been a problem. जैसे Citizenship Amendment Act 2019 में क्या हुआ कि there were all communities who were being given easier way to become a citizen of India the migrants coming from our neighboring Islamic countries who were from any other religion other than Islam were being given that particular leeway that they do not have to stay for 11 years, they can stay for 5 years, become a naturalized citizen. So at that point, it was seen as being against a particular religion. But this one has no scope of being seen as that because it is giving equal protection to all religions, which is good. And overall, the legislature is constitutionally obligated to let people follow their religion. So yes, it is a rigid law. It is a law that needs some improvements, especially when it comes to the aspect of justification of the cutoff date. The improvement is required, but yes, jurisdiction is there. When it comes to the Gyanvapi case, there is of course issue of impacting the social fabric. So it might lead to, as I told you, opening of a Pandora's box. It might lead to a further demands of more and more such places to be reconverted. It might create mistrust because, you know, there are so many small examples which you can see wherein the Hindu and the Muslim community are peacefully living together, they are having food together, they are praying in the similar premises, and that doesn't blow out of proportion. But when it comes to historical places like the Gyanvapi, it blows out of proportion and it creates mistrust. So that is the problem. And dilution of 1991 law will impact the outcome of this overall. So if the 1991 law, that is the Places of Worship Act, is actually amended and more disputes are allowed to be taken, it will open a floodgate. So Gyanvapi will not be the last that way. And we definitely do not want another Babri Masjid case. So way forward for any such issue which is so fragile, which is so difficult to reform, is dialogue and discussion, neutral dialogue and discussion for once, without the political aspect of it. It has to be a parliamentary discussion to make India rise above the communal tensions. For once, we have to rise above the political considerations. That is one. Judicial activism is needed wherever possible. So the way Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud ji, intervened in this particular Gyanvapi case is appreciable because he actually justified why he is taking this petition. He took this petition because the 5 women were asking only for the right to worship, not to the right of conversion of the place itself. Fine. And ultimately, the Places of Worship Act needs to be amended, needs to be more accessible and needs to be more acceptable to the people, because until and unless you follow a stakeholder approach, to policy making, the sections of good amount of sections of the society will not be okay with you, will not be okay with the policies, and there will always be this sense of mistrust. So this particular act at that point was enacted under the prime ministerialship of P.V. Narasimha Rao. P.V. Narasimha Rao. Now we are under the prime ministership of Mr. Narendra Modi, and we need to, and he has a strong majority also. So legislature has to make that call to amend the Places of Worship Act to make it more acceptable to the society overall. So I hope you got the gist of the entire topic. I hope now you can explain this particular topic to anyone who asks you about it. It is nothing complicated. The only thing this act is talking about is we want to maintain communal harmony in this country, and that is why whatever is the character, religious character of this religious site, it will remain as it is. Now, whether 15th August, so overall the principle is good. Whether 15th August should be the cutoff date or the cutoff date should be earlier or later or whatever, that needs to be finalized. And there needs to be more acceptance of this particular act. So, if you want the notes to this particular class, the notes you will find in our mains book GS2, this one I'm talking about. And apart from this, you can join this Telegram channel. You'll be getting regular updates about our new material, about our new courses, about our new initiatives like this one, the mains article discussion. So you can join this particular channel and it will help you. And regarding this series will be regular to make you cover all the mains oriented topics that you need to cover in a very simple manner. So keep a check on this playlist and you'll be benefited out of it. Thank you so much for watching.